Welcome back. Now, African countries facing some of the highest debt levels in over a decade are struggling to balance their budgets. One clear opportunity to improve their revenue is by increasing the tax contributions of wealthier citizens. Dr. Giovanni Occhiali is a research fellow at the Institute of Development Studies, and he believes that a good starting point for many African nations would be to focus on enhancing the taxation of high-income individuals, particularly through personal income tax as well as property taxes. Dr. Giovanni Occhiali joins me now to discuss this further. We can make you a professor, I'm sure, at some stage then as well, Dr. Occhiali. But let's talk about why exactly there is perhaps even a reluctance to pay taxes at this stage.
So I think that the reason why very many wealthy individuals are not contributing enough to the tax break at the moment is twofold. If we think about why anyone would be paying taxes, then there's, broadly speaking, two motivations. One would be because you believe that complying with your tax obligation is something worth doing per se, you see the benefit of it. And the other one is that you believe you will be detected and punished if you break tax laws. Now, this applies to any law, right? Not just tax law. So if we think about wealthy individuals, what benefit can they see from complying with their tax obligation? If we exclude an intrinsic motivation, respecting the law for the law's sake, then taxes paid for government services, be that education, healthcare, energy provision, whatever you can think of. You can think this about as the carrot of tax compliance. You pay your taxes and you pay for the development of the nation and the services you need. Now, it's fair to say that in many African countries, the provision of these goods by the government is suboptimal at the moment. High net worth individuals can buy access to these goods and services on the market. They can buy private health insurance, they can buy a generator and the fuel to run it, live in gated and secure community. So they end up wondering why they should be paying taxes for services they do not enjoy and they don't see governments providing to the wider public. While this might sound understandable, it is actually a vicious circle. One of the reasons why government cannot provide these services is exactly because wealthy individuals do not contribute fairly. We can think about the stick part too, right? You can be fined for tax non-compliance if you're discovered and end up paying well over and above what you would have to pay with to start with. However, the fear of being punished only works as a compliance mechanism if revenue services have the capacity to identify non-compliance and their willingness to enforce the law is present. It's very challenging to identify non-compliance from a wealthy individual. It's hard to see whether a property is rented. It's hard to observe whether, a land or real estate is being sold for a profit. So discovering who should be punished is hard to start with. And then because of their wealth and access, wealthy individuals are often very well connected. They might be relatives to members of the government, MPs, captain of industry. They might just pick up the phone and make the life of any tax officer pursuing their non-compliance very hard. And this is a story I've heard various times working across the continent.
Yeah, Dr. Occhiali, this is also one of those things, though, where we say to people, we want you to pay, of course, which of course is law, needs to happen. But then it all feels as though, and you made mention of this, that government's perhaps not necessarily fulfilling what you need, or maybe doing things you don't necessarily believe are correct. Money perhaps going in the wrong direction, you feel, or perhaps even completely wasted because services aren't being delivered. So if you're going to rely on personal income tax, you're going to have to grow your tax base quite considerably. That means that you need to put that initial tax money to good use already in growing that economy further. It seems like a vicious circle that isn't being completed and at some stage is actually cut. Am I right?
Yeah, to an extent, this is correct. Where to invest the money to make sure that citizens feel like paying taxes is a very good question. And one of the answers maybe surprisingly might be to invest more in the revenue services themselves. One big movement that there has been over time is to move from the concept of a revenue authority to the concept of a revenue service. Tax revenue services are there to help support citizens complying with their obligation, but across most of the African continent, revenue services are stretched extremely thin. The proportion of taxpayers to tax officer can be 10 times as high across African countries than it is across high-income countries. In the United Kingdom, where I currently live, there's a tax officer every 1,100 citizens, give or take. In South Africa, there's a tax officer every 5,000 citizens. In Ghana, one every 10,000. In Togo, one every 12,000. So revenue authorities are stretched very thin and have a very hard time actually supporting taxpayers and helping them out complying as best as they can, be that with personal income taxes or other type of taxes. And at the end of the day, it is the tax revenue paid by citizens that goes to pay salaries and invest in public hospitals and all of these type of things. So it's very important to also ensure that revenue services themselves have the capacity of carrying out their mandate as best as they can.
Yeah, so getting out the right tax system is also going to be very critical here, because clearly without it, there's going to be losses, and there's going to be a whole host of losses. So it won't necessarily be in terms of staff though, right? Because if you have the right systems in place, perhaps it's easier that way, or is it a combination of both staff and technology coming together?
It is definitely a combination of staff and technology. So one of the big issues in improving compliance from wealthy individuals is exactly observing, having the data to identify them and identify their non-compliance. Many high net worth individuals do not accrue their income from labor as you or me. They invest in assets, be that dividends or real estate or land. And taxes on this type of transaction are usually referred to as self-assessed taxes. The individuals have to come forward and to declare to the revenue services how much they have gained from selling a property or from renting it out. If they don't do so, then revenue authorities, revenue services have to have access to third-party data to identify these non-declared transactions. Think about the cadastre. You can see whether a property has changed owner, or you can go and check with the national utilities whether the bills that have been delivered to a household are in the name of the registered owner of the property or someone else. If this data has not been digitized or has not been digitized in a way that is useful for revenue services, then there's very little that these services can do. So data access is an absolutely crucial component of ensuring compliance from these individuals, and something that has received a lot of attention from African governments over the last decade, but usually revenue authorities are at the forefront of this digital revolution, and a lot of other government services are still lagging behind.